need a high-end designer or a lot of money to get a luxe look. Be your own interior designer.
This is Affordable Interior Design, the podcast.
Here's your host, Betsy Helmuth.
All right, my next question comes from Penny. Penny is writing from the UK, and Penny, I have a lot of reflux. I have to take deep breaths because my lungs are totally squished, and I'm going to need to have a quick sip of ice water because you know what? It's not ice water. It's ice water. I put like ice in everything all the way up to the top, and then I add a little bit of water or a little bit of milk or a little bit of juice, but I just cannot drink anything cold enough. And in my normal life, when I'm not pregnant, I hate ice, like 2 cubes max. I love room temp. Not with this reflux. The only thing that squelches the flames is just a pile of big old ice cubes. So here we go. Now I'm able to go on, Penny. Now I'm able to tackle your question. Okay, you're right. Hi, Betsy. Thanks for answering my previous bathroom question. I've taken your feedback and will send you photographs once it's complete. You said you were looking for more questions, so here goes. This room is our guest play office room. Some days a week, I use it for working from home. One sec here. Sorry about that. Some days a week, I use it for working from home. In the evenings and weekends, it becomes a playroom, and occasionally when we have people visiting, we use it as a guest room. I feel like this room is functional but missing something. Any thoughts would be appreciated. Thank you for your wonderful podcast. I always learn something new and have a giggle. I hope the rest of your pregnancy goes well and you have a happy, healthy baby when the time comes. Thank you, Penny, because I've been really freaking out. You know, you get to this place where I've been pregnant for so long that the pregnancy is no big deal. But now the idea of actually having a baby in my house is freaking me out. And I shared earlier that my kids are not happy with having this baby. And I have to admit, sometimes I'm not either. I'm so overwhelmed. I can't even imagine. I mean, I can't imagine. I did it twice before, but what my life is going to look like and how things are going to change. And I'm overwhelmed and freaking out. So it helps to put things in perspective when you're like, just let her be healthy and everything else will fall into place. So I appreciate that reminder, Penny. I really do. All right, let's look at what you're working with here and we'll see what's missing in this room. Okay, so just to describe it to the listeners, this room does appear to have a little bit of an identity crisis. You mentioned guest, play, office, and yeah, you know, sometimes when rooms try and do everything, they don't do any one thing very well. So hold on, one more drink, Penny. You have like an IKEA, it looks to be IKEA, day bed. It looks very similar to the Hemnes day bed that they sell here in the States. Next to, like right next to, a dark Parsons style table. And by Parsons, I mean like just a tabletop with 4 legs and that you're using as a desk. And it's like in a black brown wood with a white drawer system underneath. And the day bed happens to be white. Above the desk area, there's a shelf, a floating shelf with some pictures as well as some storage. Above the day bed, there is a circular mirror that has a brass frame. Now that's all tight. And by tight, I mean there's not an inch to spare between the wall, between the furniture pieces. That is all on one of the shortest walls in the room, it appears. And then as we pan through the other pictures, you have this wall that's perpendicular to the wall that I just described that is big and white and blank, save a small yellow clock. And then as we go around the room, the next wall perpendicular to that holds the entry door, as well as an indentation for a this is a calyx style bookcase from IKEA with the square cubbies a lot of people might be familiar with a TV on top. And then, you know, I can't see that last wall. So it appears that it has a window based on the reflection from the mirror, but that perspective for me is missing. Um, I can still give you advice without it. But basically, what you have done is you have pushed all the furniture up against two walls, leaving you with, I suppose, the window wall relatively blank and the window opposite the window wall very blank. To me, this is a problem. Everything just looks shoved, and then there's this big empty center with this kind of gray or off white carpeting that goes wall to wall. So, what I think you need to do is, first of all, create a 2-word phrase for this space and also pick an inspiration piece, because right now the color palette is being driven by this myriad toy situation. We've got like a pale green bin, a light blue bin. We've got, stuffed animals and colorful books and a kid cash register, and it's all very conspicuous, which leads me to believe that this is primarily a kid's space. And what I do like to think about is, what is this room primarily? What do we really need it to function as and do? And it seems to me that we definitely want to focus on the play area. That's what it looks most like just from these images. And then maybe the work is the secondary function, and the guest spot is more of the afterthought that's already being accomplished with the daybed and with the TV. So I think we don't really have to worry about the guest component, and we should really just think about the functions of the office and the play area. And I would love to see you start by reconfiguring this layout, because I think it is quite problematic to have the daybed and the desk, the two largest functions in this space, on the same wall, so crunched. And when I open the door that's opposite that crunched wall, it's the first impression I have of the room. It looks very disjointed, and it really is a mishmash of styles and visions. So I want you to choose a primary function and decorate with that primary function in mind. Then the other thing we have to consider, that's always on my mind, if we're working at this desk, we need to ideally, depending on the type of work that you do, have a good Zoom background. So if I'm trying to look professional and yet I'm working in a kid's playroom, I want to make sure that what's behind me is not, the colorful school bus and the blocks and the books. Instead, I want to have a more professional type background. And of course, I also don't want to have that window behind me, because it will really create an issue with the lighting. When I have sun streaming in from behind me, people won't be able to see my face. So either you treat that window with some better drapes, because right now I can only get a sneak peek, but they just appear to be gray and flat. Or you do something with the desk so that you're facing the window, which is ideal, because then you'll get that beautiful sunlight glow. So the main issue I'm seeing here, the riddle I want you to solve, the thing I never solve for people because I follow a systematic process each time, and it can be a little bit lengthy, but is evaluating the floor plan. Figuring out which functions are most important, prioritizing those in terms of a list, moving the most important one around the room, trying every possible option, then layering in the secondary and third priorities so that you can see the possibilities in the space before locking in. Because for me, the first issue with this room is the layout. The second issue with this room is the lack of cohesive 2-word phrase. And the third issue with this room is the lack of cohesive color palette via use of an inspiration piece. So once you've determined the layout, once you've determined the 2-word phrase, I want you to pick an inspiration piece and then start making some new choices in terms of, say, the drapes, in terms of, say, artwork behind the daybed, or even bedding for the daybed that embraces the color palette you've chosen. So you do have some work to do here, but I have confidence that if you followed my advice before, Penny, in your bathroom, you can do it again in this play guest office room. A big thank you to Aton and the Embassy, who wrote our theme song. A shout out to Catherine Heller, who owns the podcast shop and is our editor extraordinaire. We also want to thank Ginny Sunasan and her team at the Savvy Podcast Agency for their help with our social, our YouTube channel, and so much more. We also want to thank Uploft, which is our parent company who supports this podcast. And lastly, we owe a huge debt of gratitude to you. Thank you so much for tuning in and for all your support.